guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I'm here with the lovely DJ using they, them pronouns. Say
Everyone.
hi, DJ. And
Hi,
I'm
DJ.
D. I use she, her pronouns, and you are with us on this week's episode of Let's Pick This Up Next Week, where we break down different topics in therapy as your new two best friends who happens to be therapists. So, DJ, I'm stoked to be here with you again today to talk about today something we started on last week, but talking about mental health stigmas and how whether that be pop culture weighs into it or just people's personal beliefs. And yeah, so let's talk about what therapists, at least these two therapists, because we can't speak for all, I suppose.
Right.
What do we think on the topic of stigmas, pop culture, mental health? Sum it up for us, or explain the whole thing for us, shall you?
Yeah, thanks, Dee. I think that this is a great topic. I'm so excited because when we look at social media, TikTok and Facebook and X, formerly known as Twitter, I think that we see a lot of armchair therapists who have opinions, positive, negative, and in a lot of places it still is making stigma bigger and more, where I thought that we were destigmatizing. But I think that when you look at social media, there's a great place for stigma to keep going.
I think it's what you surround yourself with. Because I oftentimes, I don't venture into the comment sections about things. I just don't. And so I feel like I miss the reality, not even the reality, but what people put out there as their version of reality. Because if you're indifferent, you don't comment on things, right? It's the people who are passionate one way or another. And so I think that leads to a lot of more old views, outdated views. That's a better view, outdated views about mental health.
Yeah, and that's great. I often do venture into the comment sections of in gender identity. So when I see people who are, throwing hatred or perpetuating negative beliefs about trans people, or non-binary people, or gender diverse people, I will go into the comment section, and I'm usually pretty good about being able to, based on the research that I've done and the work that I've done in my dissertation in the last 5 years. So a lot of times I can go in and put my obviously my point of view is there, but I can converse in a way that's not trying to just throw hatred at somebody. So I'll answer their stuff with fact. And a lot of times that can de-escalate, and then usually the argument ends because they can't argue fact. So I'm not putting you're a this, you're a that, and that kind of stuff. So I do venture in and I do see that, a lot of times I take a deep breath. Okay, I'm going to go into this comment section, and I know I'm probably going to spend a good part of the day commenting back and just showing them how this is your point of view, but here's the fact about that point of view.
Yeah, so because there's an art to talking to people who are very very entrenched in their beliefs, for sure. Instead of attacking, it's that let me learn and let me ask questions, and it's almost using Socratic questioning to get people to a point where they maybe recognize that that their thoughts are based on things they've been told and not things that are based in reality. And don't even get me started on the whole your feelings aren't facts, and I can't even get into that, so we won't. But I think society tells us so much about mental health, and it's better than it was, I think. I mean, I don't know about you, but
depends. Yeah,
true. I don't know about you, but I remember pretty distinctly, I think it was 2007 that Britney Spears got a lot of headlines for I think shaving her head and just doing some things that seemed very bizarre in the context of what she was shown to be up until that point, which was this she has her, she's this beautiful famous pop star and she has everything and she must be perfect. And so she got dragged, and it was just I still see the memes, if it was 2007, if Britney Spears can survive 2007, you can survive today. And I'm it just kind of feels a little gross. And so I think sometimes we've gotten a better idea, when we see even celebrities going through something, like, I think now we kind of address it more as like, I mean, I think of heck when didn't Demi Lovato relapse a couple years ago or something like that? I don't really
Mm-hmm.
remember. But there wasn't a whole lot of just dragging of just like, oh my God, they're so, awful or unstable or whatever. At least me
Mm-hmm.
not venturing to the comment sections, that's
It
what I saw.
depends. Yeah,
Okay. Educate
I
me.
see, but I often see both sides of it. And a
Mm.
lot of times and to be honest, when I go in the comment section, I'm more times surprised if someone's not getting dragged than if
Hmm.
they are. I
That's fair.
expect to see whether it is someone's mental health or whether it is like I said, gender identity. I expect there to be a lot of negativity.
I think like that's what is it? If it bleeds, it leads. Like it's like we have to
Hmm.
say the things that are
Right.
divisive and the things that draw
Hmm.
people's attention because that's what gets the likes, the clicks, the views, the listens,
Right.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
which
So,
only
I
further leads
do
to
see
division.
like, yeah, I do see still a lot of stuff today about Britney Spears when like, someone will pick up Instagram that she's, posted and then there'll be some people who are empathetic, a lot of people who are not, a lot of people who just are ready to tear her apart. I think that when it comes to social media, and it depends, like your social media can be filtered, based on
Your
what you look at the
algorithm.
most. Yeah,
Yeah.
algorithms, yes, thank you. So like, it can depend for you, like what you see. I kind of see both sides, I think, because like a lot of my social media is like a lot of people in Ohio and a lot of people in California, so very
Hmm.
diverse populations, yeah.
Aside to this, like, what do you think is
Hmm.
so I'm a big believer of like, if I see someone like on my social media, for example,
Hmm.
I'm in my 30s, I still use Facebook. If I see someone on my Facebook
Hmm.
who is just
Hmm.
like they post a lot about things that are very hateful and things that like, I don't have to like someone to or like agree with
Hmm.
someone to just be like, yeah, like you're entitled to your opinion, sure.
Hmm.
Uh but a lot of times like I'll delete people if I don't care because
Oh
like I
yeah.
don't care about a friend count. But then I've seen people to say like, oh, like, whatever, don't like this, delete me. And I'm like, I'm not deleting you because I think that you shouldn't have an opinion. I'm deleting you because like
Hmm.
when I'm scrolling Facebook, I'm not trying to have a negative emotional response. Like I'm just trying to like,
Exactly. Yeah.
look at memes
Hmm.
and baby pictures. Like that's kind of all
Hmm.
my
Right.
my
Right.
feed
That's
is. I have a lot of friends
yeah.
who are having kids, okay.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll unfollow and a
Mm,
lot of there's times that I'll be like, you know what? I want to look and see like what are other people saying? Because I don't want to
mm.
get into the belief that like everything that I see is like people who are, gender affirming or gender diverse affirming or people who are, understanding of mental health. And I want to know that if there's a lot of people still out there who are like not doing that.
That's fair. So you're
I
trying
don't
to
want
get
to
a more
just
like
preach to the
realistic
choir,
view.
right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, do
Mhm.
you see, I don't know, I guess there's that like where I try to spend my energy. I personally
Oh
don't
yeah.
think that I can make a huge impact in the world. I think that my impact is going to be, related to the spheres around me. And so I don't want
Interesting.
to spend time like trying
Mhm.
to create this whole,
Mhm.
shift when,
Mhm.
I can create a shift within, my client or, when I became a
Right.
supervisor for the first time, it was great. I've helped my clients and I still, have clients and help them, but now I can help
Mhm.
therapists and help them become a version of a therapist they want to be to help their people. So
Mhm.
like my sphere of influence does feel like it grows, but I'm like, I'm certainly not that
Does
person to
grow.
like debate you on the internet to try to,
Right, right. I
you
will
know,
get into those debates for sure. But also
mm,
like it's interesting to think about though, like even in our jobs, the amount of people that we touch indirectly, because like your
mm,
clients and everyone that they interact with, everyone that they
yeah.
interact with, the people that you supervise and every client that they work with and everyone that they interact with, like your sphere of influence is probably way bigger than you think it is. Yeah.
Okay.
And now we have
Sure.
this podcast. Hmm.
And now we have this podcast, so maybe another small sphere of influence, but yes,
Uh-huh.
like
Yeah.
I think that when we spend time, you're right, when we spend time outside of our own like
Hmm.
own social circles or circles of people who think like us, like we do see a lot of things that are problematic or like outdated. So like I think of like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, just like outdated terms. So like recently the whole I love how I keep bringing up pop culture stuff when I'm like I am not tuned into pop culture. What brought Munchausen's back in the news? Gypsy
Gypsy
Rose.
Rose. Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah.
As a true crime lover, you think I would know that,
Mm-hmm.
but that brought that term back up, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
damn, that term hasn't been a thing. What
Yeah.
since DSM 3?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It's
it's
funny because like
fictitious disorder.
I didn't even realize that, and I know the DSM, and I didn't even realize that it had fallen out of the DSM because it's not something it's not a diagnosis that I run across a lot. It's not the clientele that I see a lot. It's not something that I've ever like,
Mm,
ooh, I think that you might have this. So it's not something that's
mm.
in my realm, in my job very closely.
Think of just
Hmm.
I don't know. Again, as someone who's like I'm just like a know-it-all. I tend to correct people a lot, which is one of my least
Mm,
endearing qualities. Like
mm, hmm.
I I'm trying to get better. But anyway, so when I
Hmm.
see something that's like that's not accurate, like
Right.
even just like
Yeah.
a switch of vernacular, but I know like when you hear fictitious disorder by proxy, which is
Hmm.
what like, the technical diagnosis would have been,
Right. Right. Right.
um, there's that like what the hell is that? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is like, when you think about, because when we talked about Asperger's, I think a little bit in
Mhm.
the last episode, and when we think about, a lot of it is the names, taking out these names because, it was problematic. The people who, are behind, like, or who discovered, these, conditions and how we named some of them after those people, but also with like incorrect, ideas as well.
History of the term Munchausen's. I probably should have looked it up,
I
but
don't
I
either,
mean,
but
even like I
yeah,
probably should have
I
looked it
imagine
up.
it's something similar. Yeah.
Probably. Fun
Uh-huh.
fact, I went to a training the other day, like a CEU that was about working with deaf and hard of hearing clients, which was amazing. And one of
Mm-hmm.
the things they mentioned isn't, and I'm pretty sure it was Alexander Graham Bell, was a eugenist. Like he
Mm-hmm.
hated deaf people. Like he was like, oh, like deaf people shouldn't marry each other because then they'll have more deaf children. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
95% of deaf people are born to hearing parents, so there's that. But
Mm-hmm.
anywho,
Right.
but it's like learning the history of things is I
Mm-hmm.
think what should change the idea, or like the over the passage of time, the way that we view things is understanding like the idea is there, but it's historically flawed how it's applied,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Right. Right.
um just outdated diagnoses. I still hear a lot of manic depression. Like
Right.
we talked a little last
Mm-hmm.
week about the overdiagnosis of bipolar disorder, and
Mm-hmm.
it is I see a lot of people who've become like diagnosis collectors, and I don't mean anything negative by that. I mean like they've tried many times over the course of their life to get help, and everyone's tried to say
Mm-hmm.
like, well, this is it, well, this is it, this is it, and the
Mm-hmm.
person is never really educated on a whole lot of that stuff because
Right.
it's just like, oh yep, you're manic depressive, or you're this or you're that. And so
Mm-hmm.
by the time that they come to me, it's like, oh yeah, like they rattle off, here's the things that I am. I'm like, person,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's everyone's
Yeah.
vernacular, but you're not defined by those things, you're defined by yourself.
Right.
uh
Right.
but manic depressive is one of those things that I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I hate it so much.
Yeah, it just leads to more. I mean, that still is a very stigmatized, I think, diagnosis, but definitely more stigmatized when people are doing that. And I like what you said about diagnosis collectors, because a lot of times, right, they've been diagnosed by people who are pathologizing them, and they don't. And if you're pathologizing somebody or using a diagnose to be like, this is just what's wrong with you, then you're not providing education and understanding. So, I think it takes clinicians who, or therapist counselors who are, not looking at the pathology, but looking at like, hey, do you want to know, like, can we unpack like what does this mean for you, and like how did this come to be a part of your life, and understanding and framework for like how you've interacted in your life.
Back to like what is back to those basics. What is the
Hmm.
what purpose does this hold in your life? Like I don't want to
Right.
rob you of a sense of purpose, but I
Right.
also want to help right size what it is you're experiencing. And so I think of the
Hmm.
same thing of like um when I see people say, well, I have depression and bipolar disorder, and I'm like, factually incorrect. You literally
Right.
cannot have
Right.
both.
Yeah.
Or like the same thing of like, I see a lot of new counselors who will diagnose two conditions. Well, yes, they do meet like PTSD and general anxiety disorder.
Right.
It's the two
Exactly.
biggest
Yeah.
things. And I'm like, PTSD is the experience of anxiety and
Mm-hmm.
many other things. There's more to it.
Right.
But I'm like, I can't differentiate those two. I mean,
Right.
I can read the
Right.
criteria for them, but in a human experience, can I tell you
Mm-hmm.
this is anxiety and this is PTSD when you experience this thing? No.
Right.
Like
Right. Yeah. The
there's that
same. Yeah.
overlap.
Right, right. And I think it is a lot of times when you look at someone who has a diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder and major depressive disorder, you want to look at like, okay, what's really going on? Like, what is the cause? Is it bipolar? Is it PTSD? Is it OCD? There's so many things that probably better describe that than those two diagnoses.
Like
Hmm.
it's hard to know everything that's in the DSM. To
Right.
we're trained to be, if you're a hammer, everything you see is a nail, yada yada. Like,
Hmm.
and I don't
Right.
know about you because
Right.
we obviously work in different. You work in more of like a private practice setting.
Hmm.
Uh, but so for insurance reasons, I think it's different
Hmm.
for what you have to go with for a diagnosis. Because if you say it's, I
Hmm.
don't know, making stuff up, it's PTSD, well, insurance may think, well, that can be fixed in 6 to 8 sessions, right? Like that's all you're approved to
Hmm.
do, versus
Hmm.
diagnosing something that's considered more lifelong, like
Right.
anxiety or like
Right.
depression. You can get
Right.
more
Right,
sessions out of it.
right, right. And it's funny that you mentioned that too, the idea that like those two things can't be um m- what's the word I'm trying to find? But that we can't work on them, and that they don't have to be lifelong.
Mm-hmm.
Generalized anxiety disorder doesn't have to be lifelong. Major depressive disorder doesn't have to be lifelong.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if you can like learn maybe where the depression comes from and how to treat it.
People
Hmm.
forget like diagnoses are often like personality disorders are that more lifelong. I mean, that's literally part of the criteria is understanding like this is a
Hmm.
lifelong pattern. You can't really
Hmm.
cure the pattern, but you
Right.
can learn to cope with it. But
Learn
yeah,
learn
many of
to
those other
cope with
ones
it.
are,
Hmm.
yeah. I mean, like
Hmm.
impulse control disorders, which is a big one that I see working, um,
Hmm. Right.
where in like the part of the field that I do is like, you don't have to have, this conduct disorder forever. You don't have to,
Right.
have
Right.
intermittent explosive disorder. Like you can learn to
Hmm.
not intermittently
Right.
explode.
Right.
It takes a lot
Right.
of time and
Even
practice, but yeah.
right. Even personality disorders, it could be persistent
Hmm.
characteristics and traits, but like you can learn like how. But it's so scary to like this is the way that I've always
Yeah.
been, and I don't know how to be anywhere any other way. And who would I be if I did that? And that's sometimes the biggest. Even with any diagnosis, if you've again like brought this into like your identity, then it can be really,
Hmm.
really hard to like, well, who am I without anxiety? Who am I without
Yeah.
depression? That seems really scary for me to like not be that.
It's terrifying. Heck, actually just staffed a case the other day of this person who came in with one presenting problem because that was the easier thing to identify.
Hmm.
And it was the first time I'd staffed this client because I just haven't staffed him before. And so
Hmm.
when we talked more through it, I'm like, because there was this idea of like every session, it wasn't looking at that thing, that initial presenting problem. And so I'm
Hmm.
like, sometimes that happens because people come in for one thing and realize it's a different. But I'm like, perhaps that wasn't the thing, that was like the symptom of it. And so it
Hmm.
becomes like this
Right.
person, kind of seeks that sense of chaos. And so for someone who isn't a chaos seeker, it's like, why are you doing that? Like, just
Hmm.
don't do that. And actually,
Right.
in staffing it, I'm like, this person doesn't have obsessive compulsive disorder. This is bipolar 1 without depressive
Hmm.
features. Like, that's actually what it was. It just was during the phase of the most recent mania that brought her to therapy.
Hmm.
Cleaning was the obsession. Cleaning was the goal driven behavior. So,
Hmm.
there's just that misunderstanding. And so, the
Right.
client came in and really was ready to embrace that term. And it was only over several
Hmm.
months that we realized, like,
Right.
actually, we got it
Right.
wrong.
Right. Yeah, and that's one of the diagnoses too. I think that is really misunderstood is OCD. Like, people will
Mm,
really easily just be like, my OCD. I'm so OCD about this or OCD about that, and like it's just so overused and not criteria based and not understood because they, like to clean. So they might be OCD, because someone said, oh, you're so OCD, then they just run with it.
I cringe when I hear people
Mm-hmm.
say that they're OCD when they describe, and hell, maybe there's more
Mm-hmm.
going on that I don't know about, but a lot of times it is that. It's I like
Right.
organization, I like straightening things,
Mm-hmm.
I like, I
Right.
like this, I like that. And it's like, cool, that's fine. Maybe there's stuff on the surface I don't know, but it has
Mm-hmm.
become just kind of this
Mm-hmm.
phrase that we say that doesn't actually mean like the true obsessions. Like I
Right.
remember the first time that I heard someone say about OCD, they were like, if you use that phrase, the first time that you actually meet someone and understand someone who has true obsessive compulsive
Mm-hmm.
disorder, you'll
Mm-hmm.
be ashamed, because it's like
Yeah.
it's
It's
not the
not.
experience
Yeah.
of like, oh my gosh, I don't want to leave for the day until I've got all my stuff, neat
Mm-hmm.
for the next day, because to me that makes me have an easier morning and that kind of stuff. It's
Right.
not that I think
Right.
that I'll die, or I think that, something
Mm-hmm.
bad's going to happen, or, I
Mm-hmm.
just truly cannot pull myself away. Or if I don't do it, I'll think about it all night and not be able to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And like,
Right.
those like
Yeah.
the compulsions,
Yeah.
the obsessions. Yeah.
Right. And it's so
And you can
much
have
more
one or
than
the other and
someone.
still have OCD.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so much more than someone thinking that like something has to be neat or organized.
Yeah.
There's so many different subtypes of OCD that like people don't even think about or realize. And yeah,
Hmm.
it's very, very, misunderstood.
I think that that's like, it's again like the spectrum of human behavior. I think too of
Mm-hmm.
like another term that has changed over time was what used to be called multiple personality disorder,
Mm-hmm.
and is now known as dissociative identity disorder. And there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of dissociative type disorders that are all kind of,
Mm-hmm.
clustered in the same area. But like people don't realize how common dissociation is. Like I think we
No.
really
Yeah.
see it as like oh, that person's crazy or whatever
Mm-hmm.
when they
Mm-hmm.
say, oh yeah, I
Yeah.
dissociated.
Yeah. Yeah. I just said to my team when we had one of the psychiatrists come in and talk about like some of the treatments that we're providing, some of the new treatments that we're doing. And she was mentioning disassociation, and you could see that like people are not like, it's just not clicking with them. And I said to my team, like, if you don't think that you have clients that are disassociating, you're wrong. And like
Mm-hmm.
I recommend that everybody goes back and does some training on disassociation because you're seeing it.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I do a lot of training on trauma, which is
Mhm.
really, I mean, like when you think about disassociation, a lot of it comes as a trauma response.
From right.
Um, and I try to explain to people that I'm like, it's not. So like the example I give is like
Mhm.
disassociation is a huge spectrum. Daydreaming,
Mhm.
technically part of the spectrum, a very
Mhm.
socially acceptable form of it. When you have a rough day at work and you get in your car and you drive home and you're home before you even think of like,
Mhm.
did I listen to music? Did I stop at
Mhm.
that stop sign? Did
Mhm.
I like,
Mhm.
that's a form of disassociation because your brain
Mhm.
went in autopilot to protect
Mhm.
you, right? So like,
Mhm.
and maybe you don't even know why your brain did it, right?
Mhm.
That's our brains are good at survival. But
Mhm.
I want to kind of challenge that definition and ask you your thoughts. I've actually never kind of considered it this way before. Is what do you think about like even people? I'll use first responders as an example, but many people experience parts of this too. Is what do you think about people who say like in the course of an emergency, they're just cool, calm, collected. They're not thinking about anything. They're just completely focused on this. And
Mhm.
then when there's the it's done and there's the walk away, it's the complete come down of, okay, now it all hits.
Mhm.
Would you say
Yeah.
that's a form of
I would
disassociation?
say that's a form of disassociation, yeah. Yeah, in a way that it might be protecting them in the
Mm-hmm.
situation and so that they're able to do their job. But yeah, and then when it's
Mm-hmm.
it's coming back later. Yeah, I think that
And
that can be really common in those kind of responses as well. Yeah, go ahead.
you're EMDR trained, which is
Yeah.
a big part of it's like a wave of trauma treatment. It's known to be
Mhm.
really effective. But I also went through EMDR training. I didn't go all the way through to get my certification just because
Mhm.
life factors. But I went through their
Yeah.
training, and one of the things that they
Mhm.
taught us about was that like exactly how to work with first responders to do that like
Mhm.
initial, gosh, I forget what it's called, but like that brief initial, like don't talk about what happened necessarily, but learn to like process it without having to say it. Um,
Mhm.
and so it's like it is connecting that disassociation.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is like when you're talking again about like dissociative identity disorder, like it's about integration and how to work with people so that they can integrate the parts of their personality in that situation, but also like be able to integrate and be present for like the situations that come up in their life so that they don't have to feel the need to disassociate. And for someone who is a first responder, right, like, they may feel like they don't have the tools and like they have to like they have to go into that as self-preservation, but like, learning that like they can have the tools to deal with the situation as it comes up so that they don't have to disassociate and then have to deal with it later because, compartmentalization, right? We all know that's not a great coping skill too. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many people I've worked with that are like, yeah, I know
Mm-hmm.
that this is what I'm feeling. They're honestly the hardest people that I've experienced having to treat are people
Mm-hmm.
who intellectualize their emotions because
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you know the emotions, you know this stuff. You are
Mm-hmm.
not integrating it. Just because in session you can
Right.
mentally go to that little compartment in your brain where you feel all the
Mm-hmm.
heavy stuff and you could
Yeah.
pull it out and list those things,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean you know how to process those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you might
And I had a
know, but you
therapist.
aren't.
Yeah, and I had a therapist say to me, my, like my personal therapist, who was like, yeah, compartmentalization, it works for a while until all the boxes
Mhm.
stack up and then they're just gonna fall down. And then, you just have a great big mess. So like, you can't compartmentalize forever.
Mhm.
Your brain just doesn't have the ability to do that. So it can serve just like any negative coping skill. It can serve its purpose for a little while until it doesn't work anymore.
We have were once solutions to other problems,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
for sure.
compartmentalization came from a need to protect self, and
Yeah,
now,
yeah, yeah,
you know, now we
yeah.
have
So
this
that's
good
that's
self.
yeah, and I think that compartmentalization is another way to disassociate. It might be more more thought based. Like, I mean, you might be like, no, I'm not going to deal with this right now. Whereas like, some other disassociation, it just happens. And you mentioned how it happens with trauma, but it also happens with people who are neurodivergent.
Mm.
So like a lot of times what you see with people who are neurodivergent is like a shutdown type of disassociation, which is like that
Mhm.
you can see that they're there, right? But you can also see that like they're not there anymore. So like
Mhm.
they are like, this doesn't feel comfortable. I'm gonna literally like leave my brain out of the situation. And so they're present, but not really. So that's
Yeah.
another coping strategy you'll see a lot with people who are neurodivergent.
I hate that you just held a mirror up to me in that moment. That was
Hmm.
awful.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I was like, yeah, I
I've
guess
done the
like,
same myself. Hmm. Yeah.
well, because I feel like I don't know about you, and I don't know if this
Hmm.
is perhaps normal or what we consider common, right?
Hmm.
Do you schedule cries?
Hmm. I
Like,
don't. No.
okay,
But
I do.
I think some people do. I've worked with clients who've done so as well. Yeah. Also,
I
there's
literally,
some therapists who use that like as a technique in the beginning anyway for people who have problems like not processing their emotions.
it's
Hmm.
like I don't want to express emotions in front of people because again, like it carries
Hmm.
that stigma, it carries that like
Hmm.
I won't be seen how I want to be seen if I'm
Hmm. Hmm.
emotional or if I'm vulnerable,
Hmm.
and a lot of that has to do with sexism and all that good stuff. But
Hmm.
like I don't want to
Right.
show emotions in front of people. So like I notice when I'm feeling like an emotional response to things that aren't that I normally could like distance myself from instead of like
Hmm.
really over associating with it, I'll tell myself like, okay, I need to put on that movie that makes me cry, which is currently
Hmm.
the 2009 version of Star Trek by J.J. Abrams. First 4 minutes, sobbing. So it's
Star
like
Trek.
it does the trick every.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
No,
Oh my
I don't
gosh,
hear.
the
I
first
think I
scene
barely saw. I think I barely saw that movie. I'll have to go back and look at it.
is
Hmm.
about like sacrifice and death and loss, and it's like, oh, it it gets my soul. Anyway, so
Really?
that's like, yeah, that's how I just like kick off the crying episode.
Huh.
And then I just like cry for a little while and then I'm like, okay, great. Like I don't even
Hmm.
really
So
like
so you're like you're like, I'm gonna put this on and I'm gonna I think that I've probably done that with like breakups and sad songs, right? Like
Mm.
this is like, okay, now I'm gonna listen to all the sad breakup songs and like, so I think I think like if schedule it that way, not like my brain, my neurodivergent brain, when you said schedule it, is like I'm gonna cry at 1:22 p.m. today. So
Oh no, mine's always just like a Sunday morning
okay,
slash
got it,
afternoon.
got
Like
it.
it's
So
like,
this is how
yeah,
you're gonna
it's
do it, not like 1:22. I'm gonna
yeah.
cry for 5 minutes. So got
Oh
it.
no, and it's like an open-ended, like,
Right.
I'm like, I got a couple hours I can probably get
Mhm.
into it.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah. I think of date and
Um,
time, like, the, is it Pitch Perfect? What is the movie where they're like, describe your perfect date? And the person
oh my
gives
gosh,
like a
no,
date of the,
it's April 27th. It's Miss
yeah.
Congeniality
Is that what
with
it's from?
Sandra
Yeah.
Bullock. How did you not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I know the same, but like that's me. When someone would be like, "How do you describe your perfect date? What's the perfect date?" I would be like, February 11th or something like that. Those are when my brain goes
Yeah,
first. Hmm.
you'd have to say like, tell me about like the perfect time of year, and then I'd be like,
Oh,
oh, got you.
yeah,
But
that's where you would.
do
No,
you know
date is date. Yeah, go ahead.
that's I had a
Hmm.
conversation with someone recently. You mentioned like sad songs and breakups that like can like
Hmm.
kind of cognitively load us to feel emotions. I feel emotions a lot with music. Like that's been like a
Oh
huge like
yeah.
thing for me.
Hmm.
Someone recently told me because I said something like, "Oh, I gotta skip this song. Like it's gonna make me sad, and I don't feel like being sad today." And they're like, "It's a good song though," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's a good song. I just don't feel like being sad." They told me they don't feel emotions with music. They just like experience music without. And I'm like,
Hmm.
are you okay? Like,
Hmm. Yeah.
is that never in my life have I heard that, but perhaps it's because I surround myself with people who,
Right.
who
Yeah.
enjoy music or
Yeah.
have experiences with music.
Right.
Yeah. But
I think some
yeah.
people don't have that. What I've learned for me is like sometimes I can have emotion to music and it's not about the lyrics at all. Like it just the way that
Hmm.
somebody's voice sounds or the way that the build up
Mm.
to the music is or like, that kind of stuff. And it can be like not based on the lyrics like at all, but sometimes it is based on the
Yeah.
lyrics. Hmm.
A lot of times it's like how I don't know, the music makes me feel. The same thing that like I think about
Right.
like a good soundtrack is
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
there's this video going around on
Suicide
TikTok
Squad.
recently that okay,
Suicide
all
Squad.
right, so
That's a great
maybe I need to
soundtrack.
watch or listen to
Uh-huh.
soundtrack. That's a band, right?
Suicide Squad,
Suicide
the
Squad?
movie? The Marvel movie? Or not Marvel, is it?
Oh,
DC.
no, I was thinking about I'm thinking of Suicide Boys. Never mind.
No,
That's a
Suicide
band.
Squad, the DC
That's my bad.
movie. Yeah, the soundtrack's amazing. It's a good, like,
With
yeah,
Margot Robbie
that,
as
yeah,
that one.
Harley
Okay,
Quinn.
Harley Quinn.
Harley Quinn.
That's
Hmm.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is Will
Yeah, I
Smith
think
in the
of
first? I think Will Smith's in the first. I think so.
that seems very random.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I have no
I'm
idea.
pretty sure. I'm
I
pretty
haven't
sure.
like watched a new movie in forever.
Oh, this one was
But yeah,
like
I think like a soundtrack
early
makes or
two,
break it.
yes,
Early
early 2000s.
2000s?
Sometime in 2000s. It was the early 2000s. It might have been to you when we were in grad school for however we got.
I don't, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
It was not the early 2000s that we were in grad school.
Right. I
It was
mean,
like the
yeah, you're right.
2010s. It was the
It
beginning of
was the 10s.
2010.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
2012.
it was
2012 when
the
we
aughts. Did they
started.
say the aughts? No, the aughts are
The until
2010.
10.
No,
Yeah. No, the
until
10s, I
10s.
guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess.
I don't know what year it
Does that mean
is.
last decade was the teens? I
I
don't know.
guess.
Anyway, the 2010s, whatever.
We don't have
But anyway, there was
ADHD.
this TikTok
Um,
I no, not at all. There was this TikTok I saw about how music makes the
uh,
biggest difference. So I love The Office. That's like
oh,
my
yeah.
go-to show.
Hate The
Love The
Office.
Office. And
Yeah. Don't like it.
I recently with one of our very dear friends, we
Uh-huh.
recently competed in a trivia
Oh, yeah.
contest
I saw
about
that.
The Office, hosted by the actor who played Todd Packer.
Mm-hmm.
And our trivia team name was Who Has Two Thumbs and Hates Todd Packer? And we came in like fifth place out of like almost 50
Yeah, that's
teams.
pretty
So I was
awesome.
like,
I would never.
I was pretty impressed.
That's good. I've
But
tried to get into it, and I don't know what it is about that show that I'm like, I can't like it because I like people say it's like Parks and Recs, but I like Parks and Rec. I don't like
I love
that
Park
one.
and Rec.
Yeah.
I love anything oh my gosh, I can't remember his name does, but Parks and Rec, The Good Place. Oh my God, so
Oh,
good.
The Good
Brooklyn
Place is good.
Nine-Nine. Those are
Yeah,
four of my favorite shows right there. But
really. I haven't
anyway,
seen
there
Brooklyn
is
Nine. Yes.
you should watch it. There's a TikTok
Uh-huh.
about The
Yes.
Office. that it
Okay.
takes clips of The Office, and instead of kind of putting it with like the jovial, like, music that's like part of the intro,
Mhm.
uh, they put like horror music to it, and they like
Oh,
split
nice.
different. And it
Mhm.
seems like the most amazing horror movie. Like, I would watch it. And so, like,
Mhm.
to me, almost kind of bringing this back to like how we frame things and set things, like something as simple as the music makes a huge difference
For
in things.
sure. For
But I
sure.
think that's also the lens that we like, the lens in
Mhm.
life that we work with.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I don't, I don't know how many times there's been like interpersonal conflict with like anyone. Like, if someone comes to me and they're talking about interpersonal conflict,
Mhm.
I'm almost like, how are you viewing this person? Because you view like you let one thing like shade your vision of this whole person, and like they weren't just that one thing. Like,
Right.
if someone judged me about my worst day and
Right.
that was it, oof, everything that I
Mm.
do, like,
Mhm.
I would be considered rude, like,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
really, really shades our vision.
Yeah. I just watched American Fiction. It's the new movie out with oh gosh, the one guy from This Is Us. He was on Army Wives too, isn't it? But
Mm.
there's the main character in the movie. He meets a woman who's a like a what do they call the defense attorneys that are like assigned by the court? Public
Public
defender.
or yeah, public defenders, yeah.
Yeah. And he asked in the movie,
I
he
almost
asked
said
like how
what a lot of people say is like public pretenders, because like that's messed up, but that's what a
yeah,
lot of folks I work
yeah,
with have said. But anywho,
yeah,
please continue.
yeah.
Sorry.
So he asked her like, how do you work with, people if you know that they're guilty? And she said, nobody, basically like nobody is just their worst day or the worst thing that they've done. And like, I
Mm-hmm.
thought like that was really cool, a way to be able to look at like, how can you defend somebody? Because like, even the worst thing somebody's done doesn't describe everything about them. Yeah.
Yeah,
hmm
absolutely.
Fascinating.
I
hmm
think, I mean, the same thing about like whenever we as humans have like regrets and things like that. And it's like, yeah,
Right.
like, you know, I'm a I'm one of those awful, awful people that I don't believe in. Me personally, I don't have regrets. And there, of course, there's things that I look
Right.
back and say it like, if I was who I am today, I would have done that different. But does it mean I regret
Exactly.
that thing?
Right. Right. It doesn't
No,
serve you.
I've
Yeah.
grown from that thing. Yeah.
hmm Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think holding
I
on to
believe the
that, and
same
also like
way.
butterfly effect. Yeah. What
Butterfly
do you,
Effect, the
if you
movie
hear just, no,
with Ashton
the
Kutcher.
just
Ashton
idea.
Kutcher. hmm
I think I've actually never seen the movie, but yes, but that's
Oh,
the
it's so
idea of
good.
like,
You have to see it.
okay, I'll
If
check
you,
it out.
if you could go back and
I'm
like change like a brief part of like something that happened. Is
no.
that the butterfly effect? What is it?
Yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. hmm
Yeah,
hmm
but I wouldn't, because it has the like
Right.
the butterfly
Oh
effect, the
yeah,
domino effect. It
because like
changes so many other
yes,
things. Yeah,
yes, yes, it does change so many
like a
other things.
butterfly's
Yes.
wings or
Yes,
whatever.
that's gotcha. Yeah.
Um,
That is the
I'm
premise of
actually
the movie.
afraid of butterflies, so I don't know too much about
Really?
them. But
So,
yeah,
is there a name
it's
for
a
that? I
weird.
bet there is. I bet there's a name for that.
I bet
A
I'd hate it,
phobia.
so it
I'm
doesn't
sure there's
matter.
a I'm sure there's a phobia name for it. We're
Yeah, I
talking about
wouldn't diagnose
DSM.
it though.
Yeah. No. It
No,
doesn't cause problems in your life
no, I just won't go to
overall.
butterfly
You just yeah.
houses. Like,
And
that's pretty much
you
like
feel like your
there's not
quality of
much
life's
else to
okay
it.
without butterflies.
I do all right. I do all right. But
Yeah.
I do want to, for some reason, I want to end on this very random thing that
Yeah.
I'll pretend relates, because everything that we talked about seems to relate. All right, is the glass half full or half empty?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The glass half full. The glass half full.
It's half full.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think we can just see the glass though, and like, there's liquid in it halfway through. How about that? And then you can
So
interpret it
that's a
based on there.
very, very mindful based strategy of just like
Mm-hmm.
disassociating the emotion connected
Mm-hmm.
with things.
Yeah.
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 Do you want to hear my awful, awful optimistic self answer?
Yes.
The glass is refillable. So it
I
doesn't
like that
matter.
one even better.
Yeah,
Even better.
I
Yeah.
know, right?
We're
That's pretty good.
responsible. We're
It also depends.
responsible for our outcomes and perceptions, right?
I'm a big analogy person as a therapist. Like, I
Me
spend a
too.
lot of time making metaphor in therapy, which is
Yes.
weird as someone
Me
who
too.
does not understand metaphor as a general idea.
No, but you understand the metaphors that you understand, and you know that they work. That's how I do it.
I widely reject so many common phrases because I'm like, I don't like where that came from. Like, two birds, one stone, dumb history, not
Right.
cool. But
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
one fell swoop, based in Shakespearean like plays. I
Mm.
love that expression.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't get me
Yeah.
started on
Do you follow
phrases,
that
but
woman on that does the nursery rhymes and tells where the the root of the nursery rhymes came from? Do you follow her on TikTok? Yeah,
should. I'll look that
you
person up.
should. You should go check her out. Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a great way to summarize all of the ways that pop culture
Uh-huh.
influences everything that we think and feel. And I
That's
don't think
right.
there's a way to truly turn off
Hmm.
our views of mental health because we are constantly inundated with all these messages from every
Yes.
media source available.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. One day we'll talk about love and how that's influenced an attachment style by pop culture
oh,
movies.
attachment styles. I
Yeah.
that sounds like a whole different episode.
Yeah. We get more and more ideas, Dee.
Go ahead and continue to pick up our conversation next week, shall we?
All right. Thanks, Dee.
I'm going to make that cheesy
Bye.
pun every single time, just as like an FYI.
That's awesome. I love it.
All
Yeah.
right. Great
Cool.
talking with everybody. Thank you all for listening along. Remember, please to like, subscribe, give us feedback. We definitely want to hear from you, our viewers, and want to know what you want to hear about. So talk to us. We're friendly ish.
Yeah.